like I was saying, these are dwarf planets. And all of these, their orbits are going to change slightly too. But you're not, over a long period of time, you would have to take like a viewpoint from the outside to see them, or wait for them to change and get closer. You know, you could call it a natural progression of attraction to the objects found in the inner solar system. But all of these objects that are large enough in mass, they will remain in balance with everything until something else comes in, of course, and changes that. And literally, the overall dust could probably change the orbit of everything here. But what we're talking about is systematic compression and fission or fissile reactions. And fissile reactions, if you can get a high enough one, you're going to change the output of the sun. Now, the output of the sun, when that changes, is going to create a different static pressure of the solar wind going out while these things are in orbit. So that's one thing that we can definitely say is occurring right now. Of course, the sun is producing less, so everything that was attracted is coming in right now. And we're definitely seeing that. We're seeing a lot of near-Earth objects that are coming into view. Admittedly, we're way inside here. That's Mars's orbit, there's Jupiter. We're way inside here. So it's got a long ways for any of this stuff to make it in there. It may never make it in there, but we've got a huge asteroid belt in here. So you see these objects that are passing through this area, they can hit those. So these are dwarf planets, a lot of them with their own moons, which is kind of cool. Once again, we got this graph. Don't really revisit it right now. We can go ahead and talk about this one real quick. You know, the correlation, we mentioned this one earlier, between the volcanic activities and the, that's going back recently. This is the most recent one, and this goes back this way to 500, unlike the other one. But you can see right here, that is too much coincidence there. Major volcanic eruptions, and then of course the impacts as well. That's too much correlation. This one and this one especially, that's too much correlation. Was it the impact that caused the volcanoes? Well, you could argue that it could be the impact that caused the volcanoes as well. However, the correlation between the crossing of the equatorial plane, I mean, could those things create a pressure wave inside the planet that creates destabilizations or increased fissile reactions, which that's how we create, you know, nuclear weapons, as we compress it. So if you had a whole bunch of that stuff that was just kind of sitting there, and then this big pressure wave came over and smacked it, you might end up with, you know, explosions deep within the Earth, which of course would cause earthquakes near the surface. Okay, here's another graph that kind of correlates the different impacts. You see all these tiny impacts that occurred around the same time as the big volcanoes. See here, another one here, volcanoes and this. So we could be talking about crossings here. Can't quite read what this side says for the years, except for that's like 400, 543. So if we went to, well, we can find the KT boundary, that's 66, 66.5, 65.5. You see all this events right here. There's just a lot of correlation, you know, like this one especially. I mean, look at this one. We got all these little impacts that occur that lead up to it, and then major ones during it, and then that's happening at the same time as that, or its occurrence. It's either one. Which one's first, the chicken or the egg? You know, I mean, this is, you get a extinction boundary layer, any major volcanic activity, and you end up killing basically everything. Extinction intensity. See this? These lines here, those are extinction events. The big lines. So any of these big lines, those are extinction events, and you can see they correspond with major impacts of meteors and asteroids. So shortly afterwards, this one here. Now this one here is a big one, and that's like multiple volcanoes, and that's at 251, 261. So that's close to one of the cycles too. So I'm gonna blame this boundary line here, the Permian and Triassic extinction line. I'm gonna blame that on an equatorial crossing, because I'm just seeing too much correlation here. I'm not seeing a lot of impacts. There were some impacts afterwards, but that right there just sits really close to one of the expansion contraction points. Yeah, that's a big one. So major extinction there, major extinction there. That's from crossing the equatorial plane and changing just everything in the whole solar system. All right, so this is a very, very good graph for that. There's big. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about one of the most famous impact events, and this is the one that killed the dinosaurs. Now it's showing the impact came in like this, but the way I see it, it came in like that and then ejected that crap out. But you know, this is an artist rendition, so I don't know. They're saying here that a meteor breakup 65 million years ago seems to be the reason for the dinosaurs becoming extinct. The impact produced 300 bodies more than 10 kilometers and 140,000 bodies larger than 1 kilometer. It looks like researchers say it's probable that a large fragment created the 85-kilometer Tycho crater on the moon 108 million years ago. So it was. They're trying to say it's a multi-step process here. 65, 65. I don't know. Saying this is the rock that hit. So either way, it seems more likely that another large fragment created the 180 kilometer crater in Mexico 65 million years ago, an event linked to the mass extinction of the dinosaurs and other life on Earth. So I've got other graphs that show the breakup. We're going to see that in just a minute here. Okay, that's the event impact site, and you can see they've detected debris way over here. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it came in like this and scooped all that crap up, or went boom, and then, you know, of course it fell that way. Of course, they're saying it came in from the top, and the impact crater was, I don't know, I think it hit like that, and then just went boop, and scooped it all up. If you ever shot a gun at the ground, it makes an impact thing like that. And that's the shape of the Gulf of Mexico as well. Okay, so look, yeah, see, they're saying the same thing. See, look, they're saying it hit like that, and it has debris all the way up here. So I'm thinking it came in like this and just scooped all that crap out. You can see this shape of it. So boop, boom. So it came in like that, pow, like that. Ejected deposits, that's these things here. So this is the type of event that it can occur. Gale to hurricane force wind, all the way up to the yellow zone, similar to nuclear testing where it just knocks everything off the trees. So basically everything in this entire zone was dead. Everything inside the red zone was dead. Flattens all the forests, and this is, you know, I'm sure the animals weren't prepared for this. This, you know, we had what? Really fast shock waves going up. Not only that, you would have had, you know, aside from the air blast that has to travel through air, you'd have ground ripples that would pretty much destroy everything. But yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. It came in like this, boom, and then blasted that shit out. So, boom, just like that. Okay, so here's a nice graphic that shows the previous. Right here, now this is saying 180 million years ago, and they're saying the let's see where we got 66 end of the dinosaurs. So between here, and you can see right here is where that impact point was, and then shortly thereafter it all separated from that point out. So that impact changed, it cracked the Earth, and it changed the entire shape of the Earth as we know it. Even though it's showing it came together here, then broke apart there. I'm not entirely sure this model is entirely correct. This makes more sense. This is progression. Ding, ding, ding. This was probably all together. Maybe it's a supercontinent, but I don't think it contained those fracture points. Whereas, you know, it's showing them as definite fracture points. I think the fracture points occurred at the point of impact, and then everything spread out, which you can see it's progressive. At the 66 million year point. So it's very telling right there. This is I don't know. I've seen other graphics that show all this stuff as a single supercontinent. So okay, here's some of the blast debris that they found, the spheroids from the blast that killed the dinosaurs, and these are melted glass spheroids and debris, and I believe these are diamond. That's a diamond there, and that's what they found. Different depths. Okay, here's a cutaway view of a major impact. Sorry, bug getting on me there. Surprised me. All right, we got an impact. What one of these giant meteors look like when they hit the ground. They dig way, way down. We got 1,500 meters deep. That's a pretty deep hit. And of course, everything in that area completely is just dead. It's gone. We got damage that's detectable all the way down to 3,100. These are different boreholes, I imagine, that they took. Y1, Y2, T1. These are different boreholes that they made to different depths, and to see what the strata look like. And of course, they didn't map that very well, but you can see the connecting lines here showed the classic ripple impact. So that's Yucatan Peninsula, the wells that they drilled to try to map out this impact point. Red is melted rock, got limestone, other stuff like that. So I guess red down here. So there's still, I guess there might still be a big chunk of it down there, but it may have reached the magma. Okay, so iridium abundances. This one is based upon clay residues from limestones. This is iridium in clay fractions, parts per billion. And iridium is not really a commonly found element here. It comes from space. So this was a big impact point right here. 65 million years ago, that was that same event we were talking about. And it spread iridium all over the place in amounts that were, 700% more than everything else. So that's a big changes. This is our baseline. Probably surrounding other events, and then of course we have at the KT boundary layer we have 700% more iridium, so that's kind of cool. That's how they tracked it to an event like that. Here's that same one showing the galactic epicycles and the overlapping. We got multiple craters and eruptions that are occurring basically at the same time. You can see that my lines are slightly off, but that's probably because there's going to be some variance to the wave as the solar system travels around the arms of the galaxy. Once again, this shows you, this is a perfect sine wave, but I'm thinking that this cyclic period can be shorter or even longer as it goes around, depending on as it goes around, different sections of the arm where density is higher or density is lower. The speed, of course, we're talking about a projectile that has a velocity. It has to push its way through dust and resistance from other celestial bodies that are also in orbit around the galactic equator, and that's going to be one of the things that you're going to find there, is that's going to vary the periodic distance, or the time is going to change as well. Okay, so we have all these different extinction events. So now we've entered the part of the show where we're going to talk about extinctions. I'm sure you're all, it's all extinctions. All right, well, we had some major extinctions, and at every one of these extinction points, what the main cause has been traced to was major volcanic activity. So, not necessarily. Admittedly, we had dual hits on a lot of these points that were not only volcanoes, but they were also meteors. Sorry about the music. I thought this would be great backing music. This is Dr. and Bernie. Right about now, the extinction events that were occurring, well, the dinosaurs were definitely feeling it 65 million years ago. Basically, their world caught on fire and then it froze. And you had increased volcanic activity, probably not just from the big volcanoes, but probably from small volcanoes too. The KT boundary layer the CT boundary layer is just this layer of just black. And it's like that thick. It's like several inches thick. And so that means it went on for decades. Literally the stuff stayed in the air for decades. And even then, that's, the new stuff is compressed down. So you're definitely going to see the skies turn black worldwide. The sun just went out. So if you weren't warm-blooded, you died. Almost all the reptiles at that time would die. You're not going to have any clean water. You're basically going to have to be able to see in twilight conditions for an extended period of time. But that's going to occur at every major extinction point. So you're going to have a lot of your plants are going to die, a lot of your animals are going to die, and that's essentially what we're looking at right now. We just crossed the galactic equator. So we're bound to have an event, whether it be volcanic in origin or a meteor strike, and there's probably going to be a bunch of small ones. Like I mentioned before, there's probably going to be a bunch of small meteors that are going to hit, and then there's going to be like a big one, you know, and we have to be ready for that big one. I think as a society, we should look at history and realize this is a repetitive cycle, and the definition, of course, of insanity is to basically ignore, you know, it's just business as usual, you know, we'll just let this happen. Even though we as a species could prevent a large rock from hitting here, we could detect it years in advance maybe, push it out of the way. You know, we're too busy fighting over stupid crap. I mean, admittedly, we gotta live, and there's some idealists that want the betterment of mankind, there's some other idealists that want to, you know, march down the aisle and just die or whatever they want to do. It's just really crazy. But from my perspective, we should figure out a way to prevent, you know, at least our demise and maybe even the demise of you know, countless species and families of animals and plants from dying due to a major extinction event. We could prevent it. And I'm just saying, this is enough evidence for me to say that it's coming. It's coming right now. And we can't change that. We can maybe do something about the ash in the air. You know, we can try to take care of all the little herd animals and try to create farming and stuff from the post event. I mean, they're saying that Yellowstone is waking up. I believe it. But is it a combination? Is it a 1-2 punch? Is it, you know, the magma gets hot and all that lava and stuff gets really close to the surface. You got all these plugged volcanoes all over, and then wham, we get hit with like a big meteorite, and it causes all those systems to move. I'm thinking that could be what we're looking at. So probably be a 1-2 punch. Okay, so this is traced across millions of years, across 600 million years, and this is the first. These are extinctions here, you see, and these are diversity of animals, number of families going up and then down. Of course, first volcanic eruption. Look at that. The diversity of the number of families and species on the planet drops severely after all these. There's a volcanic eruption, asteroid. This one was the one that killed the dinosaurs, and you can see the diversity of families is going up well beyond. I mean, this is just the progression of RNA and DNA. You know, it just gets more and more complex, and the longer you let it go, the more complex the animals are going to be. But you can look back in time, you see that volcanoes definitely cause major extinction events. They blot out the sun, they take out the plants, they take out the oceans, they take out the selenium in the oceans, and it kills all the sea life like that. You know, aside from nuclear weapons, you know, these volcanoes are going to do it pretty much all by themselves. Okay, so millions of years before present time, all the way back, this one goes to 500. These are the different peaks, extinction occurrences that are occurring across time, and I've mapped these in many cases directly to the crossing of the galactic equator. And unfortunately, shortly after we cross the galactic equator, the fission furnace that is the Earth spins up, the sun spun up, and then it'll spin down. So it's going to probably be asleep for a while. They're like, all the scientists are like, wow, this is the quietest we've ever seen the sun. And that's probably because we're going into like a glacial period. Glacial periods, you know, when you look at nuclear moderators for fission or fissile nuclear reactors, you know, the colder you get them, I mean, it's almost like the moderator works better. So when you're talking about like, I mean, they're already detecting the bedrock under Greenland is heating up in waves. There's big swaths of rock under Greenland. It's melting the ice sheets from underneath, whereas on the surface, we're having more glacial deposits, more ice essentially getting pulled out of the atmosphere, and water pulled out of the atmosphere and dropped as ice on Greenland. So the ice pack is really thick, but the ground underneath it is heating up. So can that affect a fissile nuclear reactor? Well, in the Oklo natural fission reactor that was an Oklo nuclear reactor in Gabon, Africa, was it 50 million years ago? That one that one's very interesting. Was it 50,000 years ago? Might have been 50,000 years ago. No. It was way back. Anyways, it's 50 million. I remember reading something about it that said it went back a billion years, but anyways, the point is that it was this naturally occurring uranium deposit, supposedly natural, 4 of them real close to each other, and the rocks would flush in cold, cool water and would act as a neutron moderator, which would cause the neutrons to become more reactive, and you'd end up with these 4 pockets of fissile steam blasting out of the surface that was incidentally just upwind from where man first evolved or emerged. Lucy, the earliest skeletons of humans were found just downwind from this side across the plains of Africa. So that may have been the mutation that pushed us into that direction. But let's look at what we have here under these extinction events, which appear to line up with the galactic crossing. What do we got here? We got atmospheric CO2 concentrations. You see that's 4,000 part per million. And we got atmospheric levels. Let's see here. Atmospheric O2 levels is blue. Atmospheric CO2 levels is red. CO2 is going up. CO2 is going down. Plants don't like it when they don't have enough CO2, and we do. So most likely the plants won't like it too much. You can see here, even though there's a mass extinction, there was a plant die-off afterwards as well. So you can look at this line. This is these lines right here. When the O2 goes down, that means that we had something that was blocking the sun, or changing the amount of light that was being received. You see the CO2 went up, the O2 went down, and that was definitely a volcanic event right there. This one right here, we see the O2 dropping. We also see the CO2 dropping. So if the O2 were to drop, that might be a temperature shift there, and we had a mass extinction, which you see the O2 going up at the point of mass extinction. So we had some type of event right there that occurred. Another event right here where the CO2 drops and the O2 goes up. That usually means the plants are going crazy when the O2 goes up. So plant growth, and of course right after the last one, the dinosaurs died, we had a drop off. So we had a drop off here, probably due to temperature shift. Okay, we have rates of extinction. These are the 5 major extinctions across 542 million years. The last big one was at 65.5 million years ago. That was the 5th mass extinction on the planet, and it can definitely be traced to the solar system crossing the galactic plane. That's exactly the date. Bam! Just right on around there. We had major impacts of big rocks, and we had some volcanic activity as well. 200 million years, that lines up pretty close too. 250, that's also very close as well. These major extinctions, those ones right there, especially that big one, the number 1, that one right there is almost dead on with the estimate for a galactic crossing. So the major extinctions that basically killed everything on the planet are directly tied to the solar system crossing the galactic barrier, the galactic center line, the equator. And then of course you get increased volcanism, you get increased meteor impacts, or vice versa. You get meteor impacts and then you get increased volcanoes. But we're seeing an increase in volcanoes before the increase in meteors. So I'm going to say, based upon our observations, we're seeing increased meteor activity, increased volcano activity, and then we're seeing more rocks. And nothing big has hit yet, so we're already seeing big volcanoes all over the planet. Even since I was a kid, we're starting to see all these mass volcanoes popping all over the Earth. The small ones and some of the bigger ones. We haven't seen any of the really big ones. They say Yellowstone's heating up. It's going to pop one of these days. That's going to be a major one. That'll change the climate of the Earth. Okay, we have some more. These are crater formation rates, number over millions of years. And you can see it as, we got millions of years, 0. This is 50, there's 66, that's the KT boundary. So between the last impact and now, this goes back in time. This goes back in time 300 million years ago. The frequency of impacts here on Earth has, well, it looks like it's gone down 38, is that millions of years? Okay, millions of years, yeah, 50 million years. I don't know why this graph's going backwards. This is saying 113, this is saying 38. So as I go this way, even though the number, the graph is getting smaller, the number's getting bigger. So I'm trying to figure out, maybe that's, oh I see, that's the year. That's the year. So okay, cool. That's what I was thinking. As our solar system gets older, of course, the rocks all break up into smaller pieces. There's going to be more of them that move around at the equatorial crossing. So we're seeing a trend that goes rapidly up towards more impacts. Now, of course, we've got a sharp drop off here, but we're definitely seeing an increase in the number of impacts across the last 300 million years. So that's bad. Admittedly, we got a drop off here, but that might just be one of these weird bumps in the middle. We could have another big ass peak coming up. So right after the last crossing, as we crossed over to the other side, looks like we entered these would be layers of the galactic membrane, where you'd have increased compression in space. So that's going to be like, it's going to pull all those asteroids and meteors into the inner reaches of the solar system, and of course you can have more impacts when that occurs. And that's the same thing here, because you get a double spike here. So that's very much usually like, for example, you get the shock bow of the major planets. We can see that as a planet goes around the sun, like Jupiter has a shock bow in the front and behind it. So there's a dual attractive force there that creates problems here as we pass through their wakes, essentially, as they travel around the sun. So that right there just shows us we have an increase, a very large increase, in the number of impacts that occur over the last 300 million years, and that would be equivalent to 10 cycles. 32 million cycle, 10 of those cycles. So the trend is more impacts, not less. Once again, we're going to throw this up so we can see a visualization of how the sun travels through and over and around these arms and through them. Look at that right there. That's really cool, traveling through that. And it's going to vary. So we're going to that will also explain the periodic change in some of the diagrams that I've seen so far. Okay, atmospheric CO2 levels. This one is a little bit different, but you're going to see that right here, atmospheric CO2 levels, this is parts per million, and you can see these are major volcanic events, and at major volcanic events you have major extinctions. This is the end of the Permian period. Huge spike. We went to 3,000 parts per million, and it basically killed a lot of stuff. That's the end of the Permian period. It just killed tons of stuff and probably blotted out the sun. Triassic, same thing, big volcano. Jurassic, Cretaceous, big volcano, and that was only at 2,000 parts per million. And the end of the Cretaceous, and then the PE boundary here. Let's see what we got. And they're showing the end of the Cretaceous period. That was a big volcano. Jurassic, Cretaceous, that was a big volcano. And the amounts really aren't that much. When you talk about a system of life that's really balanced to have, less CO2, and these big volcanoes, when they erupt, they emit massive amounts of CO2. And you can see that one going all the way up to 3,000 parts per million. These ones up easily at 2,000 each. And this one's at 1,500. This was at 1,500. And that's the Cretaceous right there. So that's 66 million. So that was the last one, the last big one when everything died. End of the Cretaceous. CT boundary right there. But there's a big volcano there too. So, I don't know. See, there's another one here. Right now we are at 400 parts per million, which is, right about there. So we're right here at 400, but we're going up steadily. You can see when we hit 1,000, well, actually when we hit 2,000, that's going to basically kill as much as, well, maybe not with you're going to have no volcanic effects. So it's going to be kind of a strange effect when we hit 2,000. Will things be able to survive here? The plants will. The plants will love it, but we probably won't. Okay, mass extinctions. These are the percentage of species wipe out. Okay, so we have the biggest one, of course, is the Permian Triassic. Okay, and that one's also been traced back to it's 248, so that's right on par with a crossing or right after a crossing, and 96% of life on this Earth perished. 96%. So that's something big to consider, and this ties in with the galactic crossing. That just occurred. We just crossed again. Was it the same direction? Is there a big cloud of asteroids that we're passing through right now? Yes. So we might be on the same path here as we did, unfortunately. 65 million years ago, so that's the Cretaceous Tertiary barrier. 76%. 76% of all life on the planet died. Into the Triassic. Triassic, so another 76%. Bam, right there, another one. Just as high. Now, these background rate of extinctions appear to correlate, and these could very well be showing us the pattern through that galactic center, that galactic equator. But these are major extinctions. These are kill everything pretty much on the whole planet, from volcanic activity, from meteor impacts. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it. We can try to stop the meteor impacts, but I mean, it only goes so far, right? We're just humans, right? Anyways, we may not be able to get past the background rate, but some of these things, I don't know, we might be able to survive. But we're coming up on pretty much an end of days scenario. We're getting increased meteors and asteroids are going close to the Earth, and we're getting increased volcanic activity worldwide, which fits with everything that I've been seeing with compressed space and how fission reactions work around that type of situation. Okay, so when you look at impactors across time, every hour we have quite a few at 1 meter impactor size, but very few of these mass extinction ones that are 10 kilometers to 100 kilometers in diameter. But they do occur. Frequency every 100 million years. Once in Earth's history is right here on the line for 100 kilometer diameter, maybe 80, 75, 50 kilometers in diameter. They're saying the big ones don't hardly ever hit us. But it's not even here on every million years, but every 100 million years, that would be, we have quite a few that have occurred in that point. And this graph has probably been marked out on actual events. Lots of atmospheric explosions every century, every millennium, every day. We have all these things that occur all the time here. However, this is what I'm looking at right now, tsunamis. Tsunamis is what I'm predicting across that scale. So we're looking at 1 kilometer, so maybe 0.6 to 1.2 kilometers in diameter, which is a pretty big band there. And that's more like every million years they're saying that we have tsunamis and stuff that can occur from that. So the more likely occurrence of tsunami causing impactors, it's much higher. There's a lot more 1 kilometer rocks in our solar system than there are 10 kilometers or even 100 kilometers that are going to come in to the inner region. Now, of course, the really small stuff you can see every hour. We get tons of them. They're about 1 meter in diameter. Not that big. If we run into a cloud of that, at least we'll see it, and There's nothing really in the papers. They're more worried about, the news is more worried about politics and sex and violence and everything else, but they're not really looking at this. I mean, if we saw an overall increase of small impacts lighting up our magnetosphere of the planet, it just leads me to believe we're going to have larger impacts as well. There's going to be some bigger ones hiding in there.